Yo, BJ Gaddour here. I want to take you through my BFR sled work. Now we can go forwards and backwards on this. And again, with the sled, so many options to choose from, whether you're at home or going to the gym. Obviously, there's a classic traditional sled you push, indoor, outdoor. Big fan of Torque Fitness and their sleds. I've done a lot on that. You can also take a treadmill, turn it off, called the dead mill. And especially when it comes to the backward walking style, you just slowly go between pushing away on that treadmill, driving through that big toe in particular, working that terminal knee extension, probably the most applicable to knee rehab, because again, that terminal knee extension is what builds that low quad VMO muscle that's very important for tracking that patella. When that gets weak, especially with chronic arthritic swelling, that kneecap goes out to the side, which is made even worse by the fact that most people have very dominant outer thigh vastus lateralis muscles, which contribute to that lateral pull, which can cause a host of issues, mainly wearing down the cartilage, tendonitis, and then really aggressive arthritis. Joint replacements down the road, no doubt. So we want to avoid that whenever possible. You can also take a traditional treadmill and you can put it between half a mile and 1 mile an hour, put the incline as high as it goes, and just kind of work on stepping back and forth in a similar manner. Again, working that terminal knee extension, keeping the hips slightly bent. And one thing I'll say too, obviously you can push a regular sled forwards and backwards, but, and I'll show a forward option on this manual sled tread, which I really enjoy, but you have to think about it from the standpoint of, what am I mainly trying to accomplish here? So if the goal is more terminal knee extension, I would go more of the backward sled. If the goal is more triple extension, ankles, knees, and hips, then I would probably want to go more towards the actual forward sled push. You can also mix between them, which is also fantastic. Again, on all these, really focus on pushing through the big toe. That's very important for maxing out the activation of a bunch of key muscles, soleus, and also the VMO muscle as well. But you can do the whole suite on a traditional treadmill, the dead mill, or get something like this, a sled tread. Just do a regular sled pull, and you can go push pull. I love continuous formats of, like, let's say set the clock for 10 to 20 minutes, push it X amount, maybe 25 yards, pull it back 25 yards, repeat for time. You can also, especially with what I'm using today, which is the SUJI BFR cuffs, where I can adjust the compression from 40 to 80% in 5% increments. I can do, ascending sets going from 40% and adding 5% every couple minutes till I get to 80 and max it out. I can do descending sets. I can do drop sets where I start really high, when I fatigue, bump it down. So it's almost like treating the pressurized cuff like weights. And what we're doing here, by the way, is we're taking advantage of BFR to do this. Now, when I initially was trying to get after my knee rehab, I started doing these backward. I've been doing sled a long time. I played football in high school and college, and we did all this stuff. But obviously, technology has come out where you can kind of get a manual option or that type of thing, and it became very popular for knee rehab, for terminal knee extension and VMO development. The issue is when you have really aggressive knee arthritis, bone spurs, like I do, patellar tracking issues, it's hard to get the proper training effect without flaring up the joint and causing swelling. So with BFR, I was finding that I could go really and this has adjustable resistance. I can also go between the easier on this version. Incline is easier because there's a downward gravitational push. Most other treadmill options, obviously incline is harder. I could also walk backwards outside uphill against a gradient to get a similar effect. Just make sure you don't fall back. And so I was trying, how can I get the pump I was getting, but without the joint strain or swelling the next day? So with BFR, I could go slower and really focus more on my technique on really pushing through the big toe, driving the extension, slow, lighter resistance, slower speeds, but I was getting a better muscle pump. And I wasn't getting the joint pain or soreness or swelling the next day. So again, you can do this without the BFR. The BFR is going to make it so much more effective. Within a minute or two, with the right amount of occlusion and compression, you're going to get a pump that would take 10 plus minutes without it, and typically it would take really fast speeds, really heavy loads, etc. to achieve it. You can also go with the cheaper BFR bands, or you can floss band it, and just know with the floss bands, they're super intense. So what you might have to do is just only keep them on for 2 to 5 minutes at a time, take them off, rest a couple minutes, put them right back on, and kind of approach it in that manner, which is fine. Treat it like a traditional set. Push or pull on the sled as long as you can with the floss bands on. Take them off, rest a couple minutes, and then repeat as many sets as you want, or just do it as a quick starter or finisher to kind of blow things out. Now, one thing to note, in terms of attachment style here. I actually just warmed up for 20 minutes on my BFR bike. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. And I'm actually using a lower placement so I didn't have to deal with the shaping or the uncomfortable nature of the wrap or the cuff, like digging into the seat, digging into my crotchal region. So what I attach it on the rectus femoris middle quad muscle versus the traditional attachment is all the way up in the gluteal fold, the uppermost section of that thigh, right below the butt cheek, is typically where people do it. But for what I'm trying to accomplish, which is mainly VMO development, I've got it right stacked in the mid quad below the VMO. So I can actually maximize the occlusion on this guy, which I really enjoy too. And one thing to know too with putting these up, and you can, by the way, you can walk with this too. The walk-in, especially when you go with the higher attachment into the glute, but even still with this, what it does, I've noticed, and this isn't like, it's a slightly different type of walk because I have to stabilize and push for counterbalance on this. But what I noticed is if you haven't noticed, my hamstrings are the size of most people's legs. So they're very active. And what was happening when I was going into my gait, driving hip extension, I was leading more hamstring than glute. But the compression on the hamstring was actually forcing the glute to fire first before the hamstring. So it was actually improving the firing patterns of my muscles, which is fantastic. And again, you can do the same thing with the floss band, the BFR band, or these high-end SUJI BFR pressure cuffs, which by the way, I've got my app here. I'm gonna take you through a little session here where I start at 60%. You can see kind of the pace I'm gonna go at where I'm starting fatigue, then I'm gonna bump up 5% in increments and kind of burn it out for you so you can kind of see it in real time. Obviously it's higher end, it's about $700 with HSA, FSA eligible funds, which is great. And the way I was looking at it, facing total knee replacements, well, each one is about $10,000. Each joint, 85% success rate, and then even when it's successful, you typically don't have the same type of function. Most people never gain the flexion all the way back in their knee, etc. And I don't have time. I gotta make money, I gotta pay bills, and I gotta stay active and in shape. So I don't have time to take a year off. So I'm trying to kick that can as far down the road as possible and manage this arthritis to the best of my ability. And I've done so 3 months in the summer now as I've been beta testing and developing what is the cheat code. So this is bonus cardio, starter, finisher, off day, but it's a big component of the knee rehab. So I did the biking first, which I like to do because the biking stabilizes my hips, and then I can really warm up the knee joint, get my VMOs popping, and then when I come on here, I still, by the way, prefer, if you are rehabbing, don't go, I love the regular sled, but what I recommend, especially on the backward style, is handles, and then ideally your hips having something to push on, because again, a lot of the knee issues are coming from possibly a hip instability, asymmetry issue, so this can help us block that. And then if we have tracking issues with the patella, any sort of lateral deviation is going to cause that kneecap to wiggle a bit, and that's going to be wearing down the cartilage more, potentially causing more tendonitis issues. So what I was finding, again, BFR, high stability, slow, and then just ramp up the speed in the load or the intensity based on what you're using. But it doesn't take much. And again, your goal is initially 5 to 10 minutes continuous, build up to 20. Then you can start playing with some intervals where you're going, let's say, 60 seconds hard, 60 seconds light or rest, 5 to 10 total times. That's a nice way to start. Or you can kind of treat it like boxing rounds where you go 2 to 3 minutes on, 1 minute rest and repeat. But steady state continuous is where you build your base. So I'm at 60% here, and I've got a slight hip dip. And again, I'm focusing on just driving and pushing through the big toe. If you can do a minute or two with no pain in the knee joint and your good stable form and technique, you can say, okay, I'll start to speed it up a bit, or I can actually bump the intensity up. So that's feeling pretty good. Breath-wise, if I'm going really quick on this, I go 4-4 breathing cadence. I try to keep it mostly nasal only. That would mean every 4 pushes, I inhale, every 4 pushes, I exhale. So it would go. Now, if I've got high intensity, high load, I might go 2 words. 2 push inhale, 2 push exhale. I may even come into exhaling through the mouth. So, now it's really important to understand, you've got to have a breathing strategy for every exercise, particularly cardio. And a lot of people, they jump on a bike, a rower, a skier, I see it all the time, and they just go crazy, and they have no way of managing their breath, which means they're gonna fatigue faster, they're gonna have harder time recovering between sets, between workouts. They're also gonna kind of create a situation where they're just like really high cortisol, really stressed out, and they're not owning the movement, right? You wanna learn how to do your movements relaxed. Stay ahead of your breath, under control, and then build that baseline over time. The way Bruce Lee used to do, right? It's all about relaxed strength, relaxed power. Yeah, you can go hero mode and scream and yell. You can't sustain that. But you can sustain good breathing mechanics, stable form, rely on that, build that baseline up to the point where you gradually build the ability to go for longer, harder, but especially when you're doing BFR, because this is creating a hypoxic environment below the attachment site in particular, but there's secondary effects above. So the main thing though, if we look at it, taking your muscles into altitude, all right? So you're trapping blood, you're allowing arterial inflow, and if you don't compress too tight, you want to keep it no higher than 80% compression, whatever you're using, then it's restricting the venous return, which means the blood's pooling, there's limited oxygen there, slow twitch fibers fatigue really quick, fast twitch fibers have to kick in at loads and intensities they typically never would, and it feels to your muscles, which are dumb, your nervous system. That's the smart part of your body when it comes to the you know, doing fitness, right? Your muscles are dumb. All they know is time and tension, and the tension they feel because of the restriction, it feels like heavy weight. It feels like fast, explosive movements, all right? So I'm at 60 now, and I can go at a pretty good pace here, and I could go, by the way, at the same load intensity, I could go slow recovery pace, and then quicker, faster push pace. I can do intervals that way too, or just go on feel as well. The moment I can't maintain my breathing mechanics, that means I stop or I slow it down. Now I'm gonna bump it up to 65. Let's go through a whole set here, a build up. I could even pyramid it all the way up and down, set the clock for 20 minutes, and just get as much work done as possible. Here we go. So 5% added, and again, what you'll notice with typical BFR, if we're looking at rep-based stuff like push-up squats, typically what would fatigue you in 20 reps can happen in as little as 5 to 10 reps. And then especially on the repeats, I love rest pause. Rest pause briefly, 10 to 20 seconds, no more than 30. You keep going close to failure without losing form and technique, and you can get so many light load failures, so you really achieve a powerful muscle building stimulus. So that 65, again, it's like adding weight to the sled, but I kept the weight the same. And the pump is precious right now. I'm really building it up. All right, so that's feeling good. Let's bump it to 70. And when you inflate this, by the way, they say just stay still until it'll tell you when it's ready to go and inflates up. Nice little iPhone app. I mean, I'll tell you what, this used to be stuff that, again, this is well researched. It's not bullshit or pseudoscience. This has been used in high-end sports rehabilitation settings. Wounded warriors coming back from war that have amputations or serious injuries and could not rehabilitate the joint traditionally, they started using blood pressure cuffs in a similar manner, occluding the blood flow to certain areas they're trying to build muscle to with super light loads because of how injured they were. So now with these awesome consumer products, again, HSA, FSA eligible, the masses now have a real precise way to do this. Again, 80% is, you never want to go higher than 80%, so it means you never have to worry about it being too tight, and you can build up from 40, halfway of that compression in 5% increments. You treat it like a weight stack. I can go up and down and just have a great workout that way. And again, this, one thing I noticed too when I started doing a lot of BFR cardio, because the legs already are such big fat burners, such big muscles, such big oxygen demand, but there's such a big growth hormone stimulus during the workout, which, you know, that's one thing intervals do. There's a big catecholamine response. Intervals in particular, HIITs, but also just like intensive cardio pushes, that generation of lactate stimulates growth hormone production naturally. So I noticed, man, I was getting so lean and shredded, which was one of my concerns about, like, I stopped walking as much and backed off on anything that would kind of flare up the knee joint. So I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna get so much cardio, so it might affect my overall calorie burn and shred, and I gotta bring my loads down a bit, but I was actually getting leaner while developing the muscle in the areas I really needed to in my lower body. Whew, that 70 is tough. You can hear my respiration, harder to talk, all right? And that's how you know too, if you can't, the moment you can't really start talking during your cardio, you flipped over the switch to more of a high intensity interval push. So I'm still more steady state, breathing heavier. I'm at 75% compression now. And one thing too, I can go continuous on this, or what I also like to do too is, let's say I hit like 2 to 5 minutes on this, hit a set of squats, still with the BFR, or do some lunging, some step ups, or some terminal knee extension, which by the way, I love doing TKEs before working my backward sled because it really activates that VMO and improves that terminal knee extension before I start working it for time, for high repetition, high volume. So, and again, but the bike also helped with that too. And I even, by the way, warming up wise, I wrapped my knees with floss bands with that medial wrapping technique to help pull and stretch that kneecap more medially versus laterally. And I did a couple minutes both on the bike and then here before getting into the workout. So floss banding the area, that's the great thing about floss bands. You get the support, you get the compression, the fascial restriction improvements, and then it helps get more flexion extension in the joint. You work the pattern you're about to work with the floss band on, take them off. Wow, smooth muscle mechanics, optimized joint positioning, everything's active, good sweat going, so that's great too. Man, 75 is crushing me right now. Let's go to 80. This is as high as it goes. You probably hear it, I don't know if you guys hear it adjusting, which is pretty cool. All right, let's pump it. And then what I would do with this, once I get as high as I can, I was kind of going, because I'll do a 20-minute countdown clock on this, and I'll just go until I start to lose the speed. Here's a good speed I want to maintain. When I can't maintain that speed, I'll rest 10 to 20 seconds, get right back into it. So basically I'm just doing like a big cluster set here. Just burning out, taking myself to the point where I might start to lose form. I might start to wobble a little bit, or start to grind through. You stop, shake it out, get back in about 10 to 20 seconds. And again, so many times I'm reaching near muscle failure with light load, easy on the joints, safe, stable positioning. So what it's doing to my VMOs is just incredible. Again, not dealing with the next day swelling, the clicking, the cracking, the soreness. Occasionally I've got already aggressive knee arthritis, so I have good days, bad days with this, but the goal with it is I look at it like arm wrestling. So when you're down here with that joint pain, you're pinned, it feels hopeless. The goal is to get to the point where you get to the middle and then secure that wrist over the top. And then eventually you can start to lean on the pain. Here's the gain, that's the pain. It's a mentality with this. So you're trying to build momentum. You got to find a way, okay, I just want to string together a couple days with little to no pain, little to no swelling. Now it becomes, can I get a week? Can I get a couple weeks? Can I push it to a month? Once you can get to the point, as I have in this 3-month block, as the time of recording this, again, facing total knee replacements, bone on bone. Doc said you got to stop filming workout videos. Have somebody else do the exercises for you. Like, bro, that's not going to work. But look, I know what he was trying to do. But now it's the point where, okay, I'm over the top. I got to still do the stuff. I got to massage the quads every day. I got to do my voodoo floss for my knees. I've got to be religious about my morning BFR bike. And on the bike, I can go level 1 out of 10 and get the same effect in some cases. But now I feel I have the confidence where even when there's a flare up, okay, rest, take it easy, more massage, really light bike. A couple of days it clears versus sometimes the swelling got so bad, it took a month or more to clear, and now it's pinned me down here. I'm back, and then I gotta flip that wrist over the top, Sylvester Stallone style. Lincoln Hawk style, fucking Lincoln Hawk. And now I've got the edge. This is a mentality. Rehabilitation is the hardest training you'll ever fucking do. That's what I tell people, because it takes perfect training. You gotta do the perfect warm-ups. You gotta have the loading, intensity, volume, and frequency perfect. You gotta recover like an animal, the ice, the heat, the compression. If you have access to pool, even better. So you get the point. I'm pretty pumped up here. And by the way, same thing can apply to the sled push. It's ultra hard on the sled push, in my opinion, because again, with the backward sled, it's a smaller movement. This is like full range, single leg squats, one at a time. Triple extension, ankle, knee, hip. Oh, so this is absolutely crushing me right now. I've got a fan low because without a couple fans hitting this, I'll slip. So I want to just take you in behind the scenes, just to again remind you what I did today. I first spent about 10 minutes massaging, rolling out my quads and my hip flexors to take tension out of what would come into the knees when I'm working. Then I did some floss band for the knees, deep knee bending squat positions. I also kept the floss bands on to do a couple-minute bike, couple-minute backward sled push. Then I did a 20-minute bike, level 1, 60% compression with these guys on. And then I came on here and did this demo for you, and that was about 20 minutes. So I got a great little, and again, I do it in the morning. I'm consistent with it. I could have gone harder, but for me, it's like what I like to do is I want to know every morning I can at least do a flow I can lean on. I don't do the backward sled necessarily every day, but I try to bike. I try to hit the backward sled a couple times a week, and then I try to get the bike at least 5 times a week. Maybe a day or 2 off based on how I'm feeling, because I also have to film a lot of stuff. I have a lot of other stuff I have to do too. So I try to manage it, but this has been an absolute game changer for me, in particular with the BFR Blood Flow Restriction Edition. Ask any questions in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed this kind of walkthrough. And by the way, I do think that flow is ideal. I'd recommend at least 5 to 10 minutes warming up on the bike before even coming on here, because again, you want to go from more stable to less stable in terms of how you flow and order your exercises, especially when you're dealing with really aggressive knee pain and or you have muscle activation issues, joint positioning issues, etc. All right, love you guys. Peace.